My father promised to pay for my wedding, then backed out 2 weeks before because his new wife thought it was too expensive. So I did this, and now he's begging me to change my mind. My dad, male, 56, promised to pay for my wedding. Just told me he's backing out with 2 weeks to go after buying a lake house with his new wife. Throwaway account because some friends and family know my main, and this is already a complete shit show. Sorry in advance for the novel. I'm still processing everything and need to get this all out. So I, female, 29, am getting married to the most amazing guy Dylan, male, 31, in just 2 weeks, and I am absolutely freaking out right now. We've been planning this wedding for over a year. Everything was supposed to be ready to go. Venue secured, vendors booked, final payments coming due this week, invitations sent out months ago. And now my dad has basically pulled the rug out from under us, and I don't know what to do. Some background. My parents got divorced when I was 17. Dad left mom for his admin assistant Colleen, not his current wife. That came later, and it was pretty messy. He missed my high school graduation because he was on a business trip that we later found out was actually a weekend getaway with Colleen. But then he'd turn around and do things like pay for my entire college education without me even asking. He's always been this walking contradiction, forgetting my birthday 3 years in a row, but then showing up with an absurdly expensive purse a week later, saying he was sorry. Anyway, Dylan and I met 5 years ago at my friend Caitlin's Halloween party. I was dressed as Pam from The Office, even though I'd honestly only seen like 3 episodes lol. And Dylan thought I was this huge Office fan. He kept making all these references I didn't understand for like our first 4 months of dating, and I just smiled and nodded because he was so cute and excited about it. I eventually confessed, and we binged the whole series together. He still teases me about it. So when we got engaged summer of 2022, my dad made a big deal about paying for the wedding. At our engagement dinner with both families, he announced he'd pay for everything and give us the wedding of our dreams. I never even asked him to pay, but he kept insisting whenever we'd talk about it. We planned what I thought was a pretty modest wedding, for our area at least. About 120 guests, nice but not extravagant venue, good food but nothing crazy. The total budget came to around $30,000. I sometimes worried it was too expensive. I'm a third-grade teacher, and Dylan recently switched from IT to teaching high school computer science, so we're not exactly rolling in money. But whenever I brought it up to my dad, he'd tell me not to worry, and that he'd always expected to pay this much for my wedding. I should mention that about 2 years ago, my dad, male, 56, married Vanessa, female, 47. She's always been polite but cold towards me and my younger sister, Tracy, female, 26. I've really tried to welcome her into the family, invited them both to holidays, asked about her interests, sent birthday gifts, all that stuff, but there's always been this weird distance. 3 days ago, my dad called me. After some small talk about his fishing trip, I asked about the venue payment. He told me that he and Vanessa could only contribute about $5,000 to the wedding now. When I reminded him he promised to pay for everything, he said plans change, and that Vanessa thinks $30,000 is ridiculous for a first wedding. I asked what Vanessa had to do with a promise he made to me, and he said they make financial decisions together now. When I told him all the vendors are booked and payments are due next week, he suggested we have a backyard wedding instead. I was so upset I hung up on him. Later that night, my sister Tracy called me. Apparently, the real reason Dad is backing out is because he and Vanessa just put a down payment on a vacation home in Lake Tahoe, a $600,000 vacation home. But they can't afford the remaining $25,000 for my wedding. Are you fucking kidding me? I've barely slept in 3 days. My eyes are so swollen from crying that one of my students asked if I got punched. Kids have no filter, lol. Dylan is trying to be supportive, but I can tell he's freaking out too. We cannot come up with $25,000 in 2 weeks on our teaching salaries. We already put in probably $5 to $7 of our own money for things my dad said were extras: photography, DJ, little stuff. I know some people will say just elope or have a smaller wedding, but that's not really the point. The invitations are out, people have booked flights, taken time off work, bought gifts, and it's not about having some princess fantasy wedding. It's about my dad promising something and then completely bailing when his new wife decided they'd rather have a lake house. It feels like he's choosing her over me. Again. I've always tried to maintain a relationship with my dad despite everything. I forgave him for missing my graduation. I welcomed Vanessa even when she was cold to me. I never complained when he'd forget important stuff. And now he's just throwing me away. For a lake house, I don't know what to do. My mom can't help. She's on disability and barely making ends meet. Dylan's parents already contributed what they could for the rehearsal dinner. We have some savings, but nowhere near enough. I feel like I'm going to throw up every time I think about it. What am I supposed to do now? Edit. A few people have asked. Yes, we've called the venue and other vendors to explain the situation. Most of them are sympathetic but still need the money or they'll have to cancel. One vendor, the florist, actually offered to reduce our order and work with us on payment terms, which made me cry all over again. Edit 2. To clarify about the budget. I know $30K sounds like a lot to some people. In our area, Northern California, the average wedding cost is actually higher than that. We chose a Friday instead of Saturday to save money, did DIY invitations, and I'm wearing my mom's dress altered. We're not having an open bar or extravagant flowers. This isn't some crazy luxury wedding. Edit 3. Someone asked about Vanessa's age. She's 47, so 18 years older than me. And yes, she's definitely played a big role in my dad's life since they got together. He used to call me weekly. Now it's maybe once a month if I'm lucky. Every family gathering has to work around their schedule. Dad never missed Christmas before, but last year they went to Cabo instead because Vanessa needed sun. Now for the first update. So a lot has happened in the past few days, and I hardly know where to start. First, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I was honestly too much of an emotional wreck to respond to anyone individually, but I read every single comment, and they really helped me feel less crazy about this whole situation. And sorry in advance because this is going to be another novel. The day after I posted here, I got an unexpected call from my grandfather, Charles, my dad's dad. He's 78 and never uses social media, but apparently my cousin Emma told him what was happening. I've always been pretty close with my grandpa, Charles. He's this gruff, no-nonsense type who built his construction company from nothing and has always been big on your word is your bond and all that. So I pick up the phone and he asks what's happening with my father not paying for my wedding. I explain everything and he gets really quiet. Then he tells me something shocking. 6 months ago, he had given my dad $40,000 specifically for my wedding. He put it in a special account and everything. Apparently, it's this family tradition where the grandparents contribute to each grandkid's wedding, and he'd already done it for my cousins Jake and Melissa when they got married. I literally couldn't speak for like 30 seconds. My dad never mentioned this money to me. Not once. He acted like all the wedding costs were coming out of his own pocket this whole time. I felt like I was going to throw up. Grandpa Charles got more and more upset as we talked. He said he'd been suspicious of Vanessa's influence over my dad's finances for a while, especially since Dad started missing family events because Vanessa would plan these last-minute trips, like my nephew's baptism that they skipped for a weekend in Vegas, or my grandma's 75th birthday dinner that they left early because Vanessa was tired. After I got off the phone with my grandpa, which, by the way, went on for like an hour with him getting increasingly mad, I immediately called my dad. I was shaking. I was so angry. When I called my dad, I asked him directly about the $40,000 from Grandpa. After hesitating, he admitted it was true, but claimed he was planning to surprise me with it. When I pointed out he had just told me he couldn't pay for the wedding anymore, he got defensive and said the money was his to manage. When I asked if Vanessa knew about the wedding fund, he said she helps manage all their finances now. I then asked if the money was still in the separate account, and he admitted they had used part of it as a down payment on the lake house, but were going to replace it. I hung up on him. I couldn't even talk anymore. I was sobbing so hard. Dylan found me curled up on the bathroom floor. After I calmed down a little, like 3 hours and a pint of ice cream later, I texted my dad this really long message. I detailed exactly how much he had hurt me, included screenshots of all the texts where he explicitly promised to cover the wedding costs, reminded him of the dinner where he announced to both families he would pay for everything. I told him how humiliated and betrayed I felt, how this was the final straw after years of him putting other people before me. You know what his response was? That I was being entitled, and that no one is entitled to a fancy wedding these days, and I should be more realistic about finances. from the man who just bought a $600,000 vacation home. I was so angry. I did something that might have been impulsive, but honestly, I don't regret it. I created this detailed Facebook post explaining the entire situation, everything, including the info about Grandpa Charles's $40,000 contribution. And yes, I tagged my dad and several of his business associates who were invited to the wedding. Around the same time, Grandpa Charles also called my dad, and according to my sister Tracy, it was really bad. Tracy was at Dad's house dropping off some tools she borrowed and could hear Grandpa shouting through the phone from across the room. Apparently, he called my dad a disgrace to the family name, among other things. Within like 3 hours of my post going live and Grandpa's talk with my dad, my phone blew up. Grandpa Charles called and offered his estate for the wedding. It's this beautiful property with amazing gardens that's honestly even nicer than our original venue. And he promised to handle all the remaining costs directly with the vendors. He's literally calling them himself and giving them his credit card. He doesn't trust my dad to handle any of it anymore. Meanwhile, my dad started sending these increasingly panicky messages as his friends and colleagues saw my post. At first, he was mad about me sharing family business, then defensive about his financial pressures, then begging me to take the post down. Vanessa also sent me this long, angry message accusing me of trying to destroy my father's reputation and claimed the lake house was a necessary investment for Norman's mental health and retirement planning. Retirement planning. He's 56 and just took his daughter's wedding fund. Our original venue was actually super understanding about everything. I forwarded them the Facebook post, and they're refunding half of our deposit, which I never expected. So now we're scrambling to move everything to Grandpa's estate with just 10 days to go. It's chaos, but like good chaos. My mom and sister have been amazing, and even some of my bridesmaids took days off work to help with logistics. My Aunt Karen is handling all the vendor transitions and being incredibly helpful. My dad is still telling people there's been a misunderstanding while simultaneously texting me that I've ruined everything and humiliated the family. Like, pick a lane, Dad. Dad and Vanessa are technically still invited to the wedding. The invitation was sent months ago and I haven't formally uninvited them. But honestly, I don't know if they'll show up. Part of me hopes they don't. Another part of me wants my dad there because despite everything, he's still my dad. And another part wants him to come just so everyone can give him the cold shoulder he deserves. I'm relieved the wedding is saved, but I feel like my relationship with my dad is just broken. How do you come back from your dad stealing money that was specifically given for your wedding and then blaming you for being upset about it? I don't even know how I feel anymore. Relieved, angry, sad, all of it, I guess. Edit, a few people have asked about Grandpa Charles's estate. It's not like a mansion or anything super fancy. It's a really pretty 5-acre property about 30 minutes outside the city with these beautiful gardens my grandma designed before she passed. They've hosted family reunions there, but never a wedding. We're renting a tent and bringing in everything we need. Edit 2. Thank you for all the suggestions about having Grandpa walk me down the aisle instead. I'm seriously considering it. My mom suggested the same thing this morning. Dad doesn't know about this possibility yet, and I'm kind of scared of how he'll react when he finds out. Edit 3. For those asking if I'm going to take the Facebook post down, no, I'm not. Several people my dad works with have actually messaged me privately, saying they've seen similar patterns in how he handles business commitments, and they appreciated knowing the full story. One of his golf buddies even called me and offered to help with the wedding. I thanked him, but declined since Grandpa has it covered. Edit 4. To clarify on the timeline, yes, Dad and Vanessa bought the lake house after he received the money from Grandpa. According to my sister, who talked to my stepmom's daughter, they closed on it 3 weeks ago. So they literally used my wedding money to buy a vacation home and then told me they couldn't afford my wedding. I still can't believe this is real life sometimes. Now for the second update. Sorry it's taken me so long to update. The past month and a half has been a complete whirlwind between the wedding, honeymoon, which was a surprise gift from my mom's brother and his wife, and then jumping right back into the classroom for the new school year. I literally feel like I haven't had a moment to breathe until now. First off, thank you again to everyone who commented on my last posts. Your support honestly meant so much during what was basically the most stressful time of my life. I read all your comments even though I was too overwhelmed to respond to most of them. So the wedding, it actually turned out way more beautiful than our original venue would have been. Like, I'm almost grateful for the whole disaster now. Almost. Grandpa Charles's property was really nice, and it felt so much more personal than a standard venue. And something amazing happened. I had mentioned the venue change to a colleague at school, and apparently she told some of my students, because when we showed up for rehearsal, there were these beautiful handmade decorations everywhere that my third graders had made as a surprise. I literally sobbed when I saw them. There were these paper flower garlands and hand-painted signs and little drawings of me and Dylan. I mean, they were obviously made by 8-year-olds, but that made them even more special. Oh, and one of my bridesmaids, Jenna, got food poisoning the night before from this sketchy sushi place that I told her not to go to. Like, seriously, who gets gas station sushi the night before a wedding? She was throwing up all night, but somehow rallied for the ceremony. She was this weird greenish color in some of the photos, lol, but she made it through. As for my dad, he did come to the wedding, alone. Vanessa conveniently had a migraine that day. Whatever. The whole time, my dad was just weird. Like, he kept avoiding my grandpa completely, which was awkward since it was literally at grandpa's house. And he kept trying to act like he had been involved in planning the new venue all along. He kept saying things to guests like, we thought this would be more meaningful than the original venue, and the family estate was always an option we were considering. I just couldn't even look at him when he was saying this stuff. Then he gave this toast that was so uncomfortable. It was super brief and focused on how proud he was of bringing this family together despite some minor miscommunications leading up to the wedding. Minor miscommunications. He literally stole $40,000 that was meant for my wedding and then tried to bail completely. Everyone who knew what happened was just exchanging these looks while he talked. I was literally digging my nails into Dylan's hand under the table. Anyway, the wedding itself was perfect despite everything. Our honeymoon was amazing too. It was this cute little cabin in the mountains that my uncle owns. Nothing fancy, but it was so peaceful and exactly what we needed after all the drama. But here's where things get interesting. The weeks after the wedding, my dad's behavior started to change. He went from being defensive about everything to increasingly desperate as he started realizing there were actual consequences to what he did. 3 days after the wedding, he called me asking me to take down my Facebook post. I refused and told him I only stated facts about what happened. He then offered to reimburse my grandpa for all the wedding expenses now that things have settled down. I pointed out that he was only doing this because he was facing consequences. His tone started changing from requesting to straight up begging, talking about business difficulties he was having. I asked if his partners were questioning his trustworthiness, and he finally admitted that 2 investors had pulled out of some deal citing character concerns. He tried to blame me for not handling this privately, and I reminded him that he had multiple chances to make things right privately before I ever posted anything publicly. He finally broke down and admitted that Vanessa had pressured him to use the wedding money for the lake house down payment. Said she convinced him they could replace it later and that I wouldn't notice the difference. Like, how would I not notice $25,000 suddenly missing from my wedding budget? Oh, and by the way, my grandpa Charles told me he spoke with his financial advisor and decided to make some pretty major changes to his will and business succession plans. Instead of leaving his controlling interest in the family construction business directly to my dad like he'd always planned, he's established some kind of trust with specific conditions about financial transparency. Grandpa didn't do this secretly either. He actually told the whole extended family about it at our annual Labor Day cookout, saying it was to protect the family legacy. That was an awkward gathering, to say the least. For the past month, I've been getting increasingly desperate messages from both my dad and Vanessa. It's weird because I honestly don't want to hurt my dad, but at the same time, I feel kind of vindicated seeing him deal with the fallout from his own actions. Like, is that terrible of me? Vanessa's messages have evolved from angry accusations to literal tearful apologies because apparently they've had to put the lake house back on the market due to financing issues. Gee, I wonder why. And my dad has started offering me all these extravagant gifts, a new car, a fully paid vacation, offering to help with a house down payment. Literally anything to get me to tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. Like he thinks he can just throw money at the problem and it'll go away. So anyway, 3 days ago, my dad showed up completely unannounced at our apartment. He brought flowers and what he thought was my favorite childhood dessert. He brought chocolate cake when my favorite was actually cheesecake, which pretty much sums up our relationship, to be honest. I reluctantly let him in while Dylan kind of hovered in the kitchen watching everything. My dad actually broke down crying, which I've literally only seen twice in my life. He admitted the lake house was Vanessa's idea, and he got caught up in pleasing her. Then he told me that Vanessa is now threatening divorce if he can't fix this situation with me. He literally begged me to post on Facebook that it was all a misunderstanding and that we've reconciled. I told him I wasn't going to lie just to protect him from the consequences of his own actions. Then he offered to transfer $50,000 to my account immediately as a wedding gift if I'd just make a post saying we worked everything out. I was so angry at this point, I could barely speak. Like he still doesn't get that this isn't about money. It's about him breaking his promise and then lying about it and then trying to make me feel bad for being upset. He got increasingly frustrated when I wouldn't take the money, accusing me of trying to punish him indefinitely. I finally asked him to leave and said we could talk when he was ready to actually take responsibility without trying to bribe me. He left, but later texted that Grandpa Charles has turned the family against him and it's destroying everything he's worked for. I feel both vindicated and deeply sad about all of this. I'm realizing that my dad's pattern of prioritizing appearances and newer relationships over his commitments to me has been consistent throughout my life, but I guess I never fully acknowledged it until now. Like, him missing my high school graduation for his girlfriend wasn't a one-time thing. It was just who he is. On the positive side, Grandpa Charles has invited me and Dylan for weekly Sunday dinners, and we've developed this amazing relationship that I never had with him before all this happened. And several family members have privately shared similar experiences with my dad and Vanessa, so at least I know I'm not alone or crazy. I honestly don't know what the future of my relationship with my dad looks like. I told him we can start rebuilding when he takes full responsibility without excuses or bribes, but I'm not holding my breath. I don't regret standing up for myself, but this has all been so emotionally exhausting that I'm starting therapy next week to process everything. There are no perfect resolutions to family wounds like this, just better boundaries and a clearer understanding of what I deserve. Edit. A few people have asked if my dad and Vanessa have actually separated. As far as I know, they're still together, but according to my sister, things are very tense between them. Apparently, they've been fighting constantly since the lake house went back on the market. Edit 2. Yes, I did consider taking down the Facebook post after the wedding, but then I thought about how my dad was only sorry because he got caught, not because he actually felt bad about what he did. If I take it down now, it just reinforces that he can eventually get his way if he applies enough pressure. Edit 3. To those asking if my grandfather might be overreacting by changing his will, trust me, this wasn't an isolated incident. Grandpa Charles has apparently been concerned about my dad's financial decisions for years, especially since he married Vanessa. This was just the final straw. Edit 4. Some people have suggested I'm being vindictive by not accepting my dad's apology. But here's the thing, he hasn't actually apologized. He's offered money, gifts, and excuses. But not once has he said, I was wrong and I'm sorry for hurting you, without immediately following it with but, or trying to buy my forgiveness.